the decentralized apps on the ClearPHONE, if you open up the decentralized app, it's going to pop up and say derived keys connected. And what that means is that the app just got a derived key from the phone for itself, just for the app. And so within that app, then, it can derive more keys if it wants to within its context, but that app is now isolated cryptographically. Any data that that app produces is secured with that app's derived keys only, right? And that goes across the thing. And then we have a password manager where you think like LastPass is managing your passwords, right? Let me tell you what happened. A year ago, I forgot my password, and you know what? They helped me restore it. And that destroyed my confidence in the I was like, how can you guys help me recover my password? Right? This is dumb. And so what we do instead with the ClearPHONE, so our password manager can remember passwords for you if that's what you really want, but you can also generate passwords as derived keys, right? And so the context becomes the website that you're visiting plus your username. And then you take that, you hash it, and you pop out a derived key that's now the password. So we're not storing passwords anywhere. We're going to derive them on the fly right when we need them, right? And you see how that's more secure than any system for password management that exists. Because you can try, you go to, whether it's Brave browser or Google Chrome, go pick your browser, and if you go to the settings down to passwords and you say export my passwords, they will create a plain text CSV file for you of all of your passwords. And you can go try that at home, right? And so what does that do for your confidence of where the passwords are being stored, right? It's nothing. And so the only safe place to store them is to not store them at all, right? And so if everything's a derived key, then what happens is, so there's biometrics on the ClearPHONE, right? Standard fingerprint, PIN, Face ID, that kind of a thing. And so when you set up your 12 words, we store an encrypted copy of the 12 words inside the phone, and that can only be decrypted. There's strongbox stuff going on inside, but it only gets decrypted if you fingerprinted biometric in the last 5 minutes, right? And so if someone steals your phone, they're going to have to bypass the built-in biometric stuff, right? And with that, there's like a 1 in 10,000 chance that they can do that, right? That's just what the statistics end up being. But that's better than like on a normal phone, like with a Google phone, I open up a website and Google is very happy to say, here's your username and password, which one do you want to fill? And so if someone got my phone and they got into the lock screen or whatever and they got past that, well, it's super easy then for them to access all of my passwords. And so that's not secure at all. And then the next thing we do with the data, right? Decentralized data. Every file that you store in decentralized storage gets broken up into pieces. Each of those chunks is addressed by its hash, and that hash derives a key which encrypts that chunk. Okay, and so if you have a file and I break it up into 20 chunks, you're going to need 20 decryption keys to put that file back together, plus a 21st one to know what order to put them back together in, right? And each of those chunks gets stored on 30 different servers around the globe. And we have the ability where you can specify the jurisdiction you want your files stored into. And so if you're worried that the US government's going to subpoena files from AWS or Google Cloud or Apple, then you can say, well, store my files in Jordan, right? Because you know that the US government is never going to get anything out of the Jordan government because the foreign relations suck. And so you get to start playing these games, and now all of a sudden, your security is in your hands, right? And those 12 words control everything, so keep them safe. But outside of that, I don't know of a more secure platform.
Robert, got any questions?
Scalability?
Okay, so scalability, we did on the decentralized storage platform. Last year we did some tests. We pumped over 3 weeks 100 terabytes into decentralized storage, and it worked. And it was fine, and we could access all of the data. And so that's the biggest test we've done so far.
We could even pull the plug on when we're actually uploading it, you pull the plug and then you can encrypt half of the photo when you're actually trying to pull it back. Which it's just amazing to see.
Yeah, I can show you a picture where something went wrong and only half the file came back, right? This was during development, it's all fixed now. But it's literally, if blocks are missing, the blocks, right?
So if I take a photo of this group, right, and then it actually hits the decentralized storage, I'm the only one that can access the photo, and the photo it's sharded onto multiple different systems. Let's say it's on 1,000 systems, we can have 333 go away, gone, and still rebuild that file. Does that make sense? There's not a more secure distributed system in the world. And what we're doing is not necessarily creating all this technology, But like Ellipsodium and IPFS and many other projects, we're intelligently organizing all these open source and open standard projects to then give it to people just like you. And at a price that's even cheaper, in my opinion, because if we organize ourselves with health and with ID and with reputation and with credit, we can actually do it in a better way than the existing systems are doing it, because they're working off of one, dysfunction, two, political games. I won't even talk about trust and corruption, but they're working off of old technology too. And so when you take the security that he's talking about just on the phone, combine that, so decentralized phone and ID with decentralized storage, in my opinion, it's the most innovative thing that he's built and his team's built within the last century, not just decade. Mankind will understand this in probably 5 to 10 years from now. Just like most of you got into Bitcoin maybe 6 or 7 years ago, but you didn't really understand all of the history that went behind it. So the point is I don't know how you ended up here. I don't know how he ended up here at the same time. They're not common. But well done. Anything else you want to ask Conrad? Otherwise, he needs to get going. You got a special man here. You probably never seen
technical. On a technical side.
So, here's a question someone asked me. So if I'm calling you and you don't have the phone and someone's recording it, is my voice gonna come through clear, or they both have to be on a clear service?
So because it's end-to-end encrypted, the other person needs to install. I'll tell you two things. So have you heard of Signal before?
Yes.
So we have a fork of Signal that we call ClearSignal, and it has two important differences. The first one, and I'm working on this literally this week, is in ClearSignal, you don't need a phone number to call someone, you only need a DID, right? And so DID is a decentralized ID. And so every pairwise relationship that exists has a unique DID. And so like Rodney, if he's in my contacts, I have a DID for Rodney that's unique in the entire world, and Rodney has a DID for me that's unique in the entire world. And if I want to call him, I don't need to know his phone number, I just call his DID, right? And it's end-to-end encrypted, so that the encryption keys that are used, this is the second important difference. Currently, Signal uses symmetric encryption, which means that there's a shared secret that gets shared with everyone on the call.
You know the little key that changes every time you log in a different way? That's what it is.
Yeah, and symmetric encryption is, first of all, you can't verify who actually sent the message, because anyone with the secret key could have sent that message, and so you have no idea actually if the person who sent the message. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. With asymmetric encryption, you encrypt something so that only a specific public key can decrypt it. And so if I send a message to Rodney, I've encrypted it so that only his special public key that's unique to our relationship can decrypt that. And if he gets that message and decrypts it, he knows for a fact that I sent that message because it was sent from my unique DID, right? And so given that background, if you're calling someone outside of Signal or ClearSignal, that's totally unencrypted. The government's monitoring it. It's surveilled.
Yeah, that's why we're here.
So clear to clear right now is already doing all of that.
Yeah, so as long as you're using the ClearSignal app, it's going to be end-to-end encrypted as long as the person on the other side
has clear. Yeah, I've already tried that yesterday. I had texted and called.
If you call someone from within ClearSignal and they are not using ClearSignal, you'll see that in the app it has a little lock that's open, implying that it's an unencrypted channel.
Yep.
You shouldn't.
Now, question about that.
Yeah.
And I think you probably answered this really good. So if I call somebody who has a phone that is not clear, and from what I heard from Michael, we can send a link to that person and click on that link, and now their phone is secure for that particular phone call. Is that correct?
I can answer that.
Yeah, so once they download the app, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you can either recommend for them to use ClearSignal, or if they're on Apple, or even other platforms, Linux, Windows, Mac, etc., they can either download ClearSignal or they can already be on Signal. So if they've already got Signal, it'll securely connect up that voice call, the video call, or the files or the text that you're sending to them. But it's using the non-DID encryption system. So how it's connecting and identifying them. Imagine a future 3 years from now where phone numbers are just a thing of the past.
Yeah, like literally, this is my dream. I'm living this right now because we sold our house and I moved into a bus, right? So I'm like going totally off everything. And so I don't want a phone number. That's dumb because phone numbers are tied to everything about you, and if they know the phone number, they can triangulate your position with the cell towers and you're toast. Right now, your location's gone, and so if you have a world where you can call people on bids, I can buy a new SIM card every week, right? Because all I need is the data, right? I don't actually need a phone number. I don't need to worry about porting anything. I just pull the SIM card out, throw it in the bin, put a new one in, and off I go. Right? How's that for security?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't get any
And
better than
you got all your own contacts, you got your own connections that are built with them, and you can lose that phone as long as you can go get your 12 words. Maybe there's another sequence in the future. Maybe I give each one of you one word and a sequence of what it is, and if I ever need to rebuild who I am, I could do that, right? Or I go and securely store it. My phone just fell in the toilet or it's gone. I literally grab a new phone, put the 12 words in, all my contacts come back up, all my history comes back up. You guys know, you understand what this is because you're using.
It's like Bitcoin.
Yeah, it's a hardware wallet.
Certain amount of money in a wallet, you utilize your phone.
You got it. Instead of just getting a hardware wallet for your assets, your commodities, currency, or whatever else you've got in crypto, the same experience you're already used to with that, your whole phone is now that. That's the way you want to think about it.
And then with the nodes and the farm part, that was the other question I had. I seen that on the website and I was like, I know a friend of mine, he stakes everything. He lives in Miami off of all his stakes he's been doing for years. He's like, well, ask him about farms. I'm like, what is farms? What are you talking about? So what's the future for us with that?
So this is with the storage network, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So Clear actually started in the server business, right? So Clear Center was created back in 2008?
2009.
2009. And there are 450,000 deployments, right? Give or take, of Clear server around the world, right? So these are in offices, they're in homes, right? In churches. So 450,000 servers that are independently controlled and maintained that have spare storage capacity. And so what happens is that people get paid to store files, which are already encrypted, right? Because it's end-to-end encrypted and you're the only one with the keys. So those files get stored on all of these machines all around the world. And because of the high redundancy, if someone's internet goes down or someone's server crashes and they get new hard drives, it doesn't matter because you have 30x redundancy, right? Does
So
that
we-
answer your question?
Right, so we could we'd order one of the servers from you guys, connect it, and then we would get.
And then you get paid to store files. And so in an ideal world, right? And
That's smart.
let me tell you something that nobody else has, right? That we have. So we have the ability where you, and I guess I alluded to this, you can pick the servers that you trust to host your files, right? And so if you're a community of people and you trust each other and you each get a server in your homes, you could make yourself a whitelist saying, these are the servers that I want to contract with to store my files. And then you know that your files are stored with each other and nowhere else. And there are indigenous nations that are super interested in this because they want to store their data and they want it to not be visible by the Western colonists who screwed them over in the first place. And second of all, they want to make sure it never, it
I'm
never
Jamaican,
leaves
I
the
trust me,
nation.
I know the
Whole
history
nother
of
conversation.
Yeah, and so
Europe and all that.
and so, for example, the Maori in New Zealand, we've been in communication with them for the last 6 months. They're going to set up a Maori-only storage network that's decentralized so that all of their cell phone data, all of their data from their computers, it's all getting sharded and distributed among themselves, right, within the nation. And then they can store a redundant backup offshore, but it's end-to-end encrypted, right? But primarily, they are, onshore, they control and they own all of the machines that the data is stored on. And so, that's another level of cool stuff.
Well, let me interject a little bit, go a little deeper with that, or separate. So I was talking to some individuals back home because when I first came to Clear, I was brand new, so I didn't know what really questions to ask after I actually got the device, started playing with it.
Yeah.
Then I said, let me call some people who are on the other side and test this piece of hardware to see if it really, really, really works. So they're telling me, and I'm telling you, they're saying, well, all T-Mobile has to do is cut them off once they find out what they're doing. So is that possible? Is it possible that we all have this phone one day and then the government tells T-Mobile to cut Clear off because now we have a decentralized phone? And we want to know, is that possible or is it, how does that work?
Yeah, so
Is that yes or is it?
Two things. The first thing is that is absolutely possible, right? And I would probably say maybe next year probable, right?
Next to improbable.
No.
No,
Next year,
probable.
he said.
I'm saying next year it probably could be the case that they do that.
Right.
But this is one of the reasons why right now we're switching everything to be DID-based, right? Because what happened, oh, T-Mobile screwed you over. Well, screw you, T-Mobile. I'll just go find the next cheapest data connection, right? And what you're going to find is free market, right? You have all of these companies that are vying for subscribers, vying for money. And now it becomes the case, it's not about a phone number and porting your phone number because that's a thing of the past. It's now about who's supplying your data, right? And so for the consumer, you benefit as a consumer because people are fighting to try and get their SIM into your phone so that you're using their data. They know that the phone number is meaningless at this point, right, when that happens. And so at that point, I would say, well, sure, if T-Mobile screws you over, you just flick the SIM card out and go grab yourself another one, right? And unless the government forces all of them to say, hey, you can't provide data on a ClearPHONE, I mean, that's out of our control if they do that, right? But barring that, well, then you just go to another country that has roaming, right? And then you try some card. I mean, so that's the thing, as long as you have data, because everything's decentralized with DIDs and decentralized keys, right, all you need is that data connection, and it doesn't really matter where it comes from. Or you know what you could do, you buy yourself a mobile hotspot from one of these people, right, or something like that, that's separate from your phone, and you know that everything going over the hotspot is end-to-end encrypted. So you're like, fine, I'll play your game, I'll buy a hotspot, right, and then it's not even on a ClearPHONE anymore, and maybe they don't even know you have a ClearPHONE.
So I talked to somebody at Apple, and the person at Apple told me they're not doing anything different than what we're doing. Because our Apple phone, I hate Apple by the way,
Okay.
but they said the Apple security system is the exact same, if not better, than what we have. So if you can explain that right now, so I can understand that.
So here's
Well,
the,
Apple
here's the
employees want to say
question.
that, of course.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. That's why I want the world to know.
Yeah, so there's a simple answer to that question. Do you remember it was like a year or two ago, there was some troop down somewhere in America, he had an iPhone and he went crazy and shot a bunch of people, like someone in the military, right? And what did the government do? They went to Apple to subpoena the encryption keys. Okay, the fact that that is possible answers your question, right? Who has the encryption keys? Well, Apple does. Because, do you know what would have happened? It wouldn't have been big in the news and it wouldn't have had to go to all the courts because Apple was saying, well, we're not going to do it. And then it went all the way up to the top court to say, well, you have to do it. At the very first instance, if Apple security was equivalent to us, they would have just said, sorry, that's not possible. We literally don't have the encryption keys. Each person has their 12 words. We can't get that for you. And it would have been an end of conversation. But instead it was legal back and forth and back and forth. Why? Because technically Apple had that.
Not only does technically Apple have the encryption keys, but they actually legally own the phone, the hardware, and they actually own the data because you give it to them. So the individual that you were talking to, granted, you're just asking someone a question, but we're telling you from a model, from a process, from an ownership. There's a reason why everyone that gets a ClearPhone, when you scan, there's a little thing in there that says own your own phone. You have to scan that, and the legal ownership goes from a clear cellular entity to you. You own that hardware now. The data on that hardware is legally yours. And the data that you actually encrypt is yours as well. Let's be real specific though. We do not want to enable anything that is illegal, right? But in their own jurisdictions, every political sphere will name what they think is illegal. We will sell these phones worldwide, except for into other regions. There's a couple regions where we're not supposed to.
Right.
We will do everything that we possibly can to ethically comply with the laws of those lands or regions, right? All this is an intelligently organized set of technologies. Most of it's all open source. So you can audit the tech. Can you audit the tech at Apple? No. Even though Apple's built on top of open source, they build on top of the FreeBSD license that they don't have to take the code that they and pop back out. In this world, it's auditable. So not only do we give you the freedom of your own data, but we give you the hardware and your data. So it's really, it's the right thing for mankind to be able to self-govern themselves. We're not saying that we want to enable anything that's illegal.
Right.
But if they want to go after something, they need to follow their law of their own land. If it's in America, they should follow a subpoena process. They should follow processes to actually take those keys from you legally.
Yeah, but it's from you. They're going to come to us and you know what you're going to say?
So if I
Sorry,
memorize
they got-
my keys, there's nowhere. They can't get nothing.
Yeah. If they come to us, and at some point they probably are, they're going to come to us and they're going to say, this is this phone, and we need you to decrypt it. And we're just going to say, sorry, we can't. They're going to say, well, what do you mean you can't? It's like, well, they set up 12 words and we don't have them. We literally can't do that.
You really, at least a couple folks in here need to read a book called Tools and Weapons from the Chief Legal Counsel of Microsoft. I mentioned this on the town hall meeting this morning. Literally, he goes through and talks about how Google, Facebook, Microsoft, LinkedIn, all these different centralized systems continually get every day hundreds and thousands of requests of subpoenas that say, this person with this email address, with this name, I want everything you got on them, and here's a gag word you can't actually tell them.
Let me tell
What's
you.
the name? It's tools and what?
Tools and weapons. You talk about, if that's Apple, Apple legally has to go and comply.
So I want to tell you something. You can look this up. Project Prism. It got leaked, right? It was either from, like,
Snowden.
yeah, was it a Snowden one? So what happens is that they set up this project where all of the major US corporations have backdoors built in for the NSA, right? They already prepared portals, and the NSA people just have to log in and they can look up. And with the Patriot Act, they passed a law which says that if the analyst suspects that there may be at least a 50% probability that anybody participating in any communication is not a US citizen, they don't need a warrant. And so you listen to me with my accent, it doesn't matter if I was a citizen or not, they hear my accent, there's a probability, man, that's at least a 50% probability that this guy's not a citizen.
Right.
And so this actually happened to me. I was chatting to my parents on Skype like 6 years ago, and I was talking to them about, internment camps and, the Native Americans and what happened to them and all of this kind of stuff. And then I end the call and Skype crashes. And so I'm like, I wonder what happened. So I reopen it and it appears to reopen. But then I close it down and I see that in Task Manager, it says that Skype is still running. And so I restart the computer, Skype is still running. I say end task and it says, sorry, you cannot end this task, it's now a system process.
Listening.
Right? And so I'm like, well, screw you. And so, at that point, you just have to reformat the computer because it's now infested as a bug, and they would listen to everything.
Talk a little bit about permissions at the operating system layer, why we had to build our own operating system off of Android, but it doesn't tie back to Android. Talk a little bit about the security and the permissions, exactly how.
Yeah, I didn't even talk about that. So the reason that ClearPHONE exists is a thing called gateway management. And so what gateway management does is inside the kernel of the operating system, it blocks all network traffic to all IP addresses and all ports by default. And so nothing can get out of the phone unless ClearGM allows it. And so ClearGM has a whitelisting process. And so if something gets whitelisted by ClearGM, it actually creates an exception.
Says GM is not running.
That's because your QR code hasn't been scanned right. Remember when you do the own your own phone?
Yeah.
That's how we license ClearGM, because you have to scan it. People don't remember about that.
Yeah, and also there's an OTA update that's going to be coming in the next 2 weeks that has a bunch of new cool stuff. And so what happens is, do you know how the internet works with like DNS? Or I'll do a refresher. So what happens is, if you type like google.com into your browser, google.com is called a DNS name, right? And so it sends a DNS query to a server somewhere, and that server says, oh, google.com lives at this IP address. And so the IP address comes back, and then from that point in time, your phone is going to communicate directly with the IP address, right? And so there are some filtering technologies like DNS filter, which is a really big one. What they do is they filter your DNS queries. And so when the DNS query goes out, DNS filter says, hey, should I allow this or should I not allow it? And if they don't allow it, then it gets blocked and there's no communication. Well, with DNS filter, if you know the IP address already, you just communicate with the IP address and it's no big deal. And so if you're like a hacker or a malware guy, you're not going to waste your time paying for DNS names, right? If you're stealing people's data, what you do is you upload it to an IP address. And that IP address changes every hour, right? And so that's why it's really hard for people to track.
These TVs, about 4 years after they were, and many other TVs, when you hook them up to the internet, it's proven, and it actually came out, and the manufacturers actually admitted this. They're actually listening to conversations and streaming them off onto their own addresses, but they're doing it through the same process that he's explaining, off to some nebulous IP address. Well, ClearGM, gateway management, literally blocks all of that from happening. unless you as the user request it and then uses artificial intelligence and machine learning to do it in real time. So the point is it's not just open source processes, but it's intelligence for mankind to literally give you your digital freedom back. Period. Is it perfect? No. Are we on a massive journey that's going to take what we're calling 3 phases and we're on the first one? Yeah. But it's taken us 10 years for the storage to get here, 5 years for the gateway management to get here, and 2 years for those phones to get here. Combine all that, again, we did it in parallel steps, but combine all that together, and ultimately we have a spirit about us. It's a service. We're here to serve everyone. Everyone. Specifically indigenous communities first. Like he's talking about the Maoris. We also had on the call the folks from Rarotonga, or the Cook Islands.
Pacific, yeah.
I
all
mean,
of that.
we
We bombed them.
We literally, those are the first ones that are targeted. We will go and serve their whole culture. Most of them are, like he was talking about, we don't even want white man or colonialism or westernized type in our environment. We don't trust it. We don't want to lose who we are, our voice, our language. We don't want to lose that. And in all reality, there's a reason why it's called Clear United. And there's a reason why the purpose video has an Indian of all chiefs of Indian nations on it. This is for all mankind, starting with the indigenous communities, and it's being led by the indigenous communities. You guys all represent them, whether you realize it or not. We're here to serve.
Well, one of the things that comes up to me is wouldn't the 3-letter words agencies will come in and say, well, you guys are causing us a situation that we don't like, because people are now have their own privacy. Are you concerned with them coming in to shut you guys out?
I'll let Conrad answer. I'll give you my answer over the next couple of days. I'm going to let him answer it right now.
So there are 2 things. The first thing is that we're getting a third-party security audit on all of our software to make sure it's all good, and then we're open sourcing the whole lot into decentralized storage, publicly accessible, right? Which means that if Clear ceases to exist, the software will not, and anyone could deploy the software and keep having the decentralized foundations, right? And so when he says we're doing it for the world, that's for real, right? We fully suspect, and this is one of the reasons that you're not going to probably see me again, is that I'm literally going to disappear. And the reason why is because when they realize that a critical mass of people are now having totally private communications, right? Then what happens is, well, they want a backdoor. How do they get a backdoor? They're going to find out who created this thing, and then they're going to come and
Satoshi.
I didn't know it.
Satoshi.
Yeah, it's exactly like that, right?
You'll be like, oh my God, I'm getting bored.
And so there are no backdoors in this, right? We purposefully decided not to go down that road, knowing that there could be consequences. But if everything's decentralized and open sourced, and the phones are going to come out of New Zealand, and it turns out that New Zealand has appropriate relationships with where phones are manufactured, so that's not going to shut down anytime soon. But you have a 3-letter agencies in the US, if they come after it, you'll still be able to buy your phone out of New Zealand. There might be some tricks getting it imported, but Mike can figure that out. And then the software is going to be fully decentralized. And we do actually, so the modifications that we've made to the open source Android system, you could take for any phone, you could take the base Android operating system, apply our changes, and then you'd be able to flash it onto your phone, right? And so even if it's not a ClearPhone in the future, right? We built a ClearPhone because we had to do the operating system, right? We had to control the kernel, and you can't just control the kernel willy-nilly. But if you got another phone that's not a proprietary phone like an Apple phone, right, or a proprietary phone like a Google phone, but if you buy like an open phone, doesn't matter what the brand is, a person who was technical would be able to apply it and redo it. And so even if we cease to be here for whatever reasons, the work will continue.
This is true and correct work, and you guys all know it. All of this sounds absolutely in alignment with the core of who you are.
Yeah. I feel identified 1,000%. I'm home.
Yeah. Amen. And ultimately, we've been blessed beyond measure. I personally have been blessed beyond measure. Conrad has been blessed. We're here to serve. We're not here for money. I already bought my $5 million house when I was 35 years old. I've already got the beauty of life. I've been blessed in so many ways. Early on in life, I knew exactly what I was supposed to do, and that's another conversation without the cameras. But from 1992, this stuff has been started to be built. The infrastructure and the pieces have gained alignment, and what Conrad just went through will prove it not only in the technical world, but in the security world, and in the scientific world, and the cryptographic world. Period. The principles that are underneath this and the purpose that are underneath this is to give mankind its choice back. Because it's been robbed from this generation, and over our dead bodies, and this should answer your question, will it be stolen from the next generation? And it doesn't matter who's in any kind of White House or any kind of political posturing. A lot of that stuff matters at higher levels. But when it comes down to the trenches, you guys all know what the trenches are.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a reason why this stuff is sold word of mouth, face to face, friend to friend. You tell three, you tell three, you tell three.
Mm-hmm.
It's the hardest way to sell this stuff, but it's the right way.
Yeah.
Please, don't abuse it. Respect it. The things that you do with this will also build your reputation. In the third phase, the community will be very real. Think about the Twitters and the LinkedIn and the Facebooks, all in an open platform where you're working off these DIDs. Where you're working off, imagine how many of you guys game in this room. Imagine the ability to log in to your phone and you get your avatar and all your tools and your weapons and your security and all of your assets, commodities, currencies, and equities. And they can go from game to game to game.
That's like on Crunchyroll, there's a guy, the Lord, and he comes into another world, and he has all his powers, all his rankings and everything. He's like, wait a minute, I'm still. And it's crazy because it's you in your mind, you're like, he's like coming from the real world going into the gaming world, but he has all his rankings, and he's just like going from world to world, and he's like the overlord of everything.
Time matters. What you do, like somebody put me on video with him saying, can they actually deliver? You were like, can you scale? We're just like you, we're humans. But we'll wake up every day and we'll do our best to serve. But in all reality, somebody's gonna pick up this baton when we're done, whether it's physically or on earth, so to speak. But the type of experience we just talked about, where you're in a digital ecosystem and 12 words on your phone defines that digital ecosystem, it is not far off. Matter of fact, we do posts every single week with photos. Pay attention to them. We do them on the existing social platforms. And then we export that into the new platforms. But pay attention, because literally the images will tell you the history. And if you think, this stuff sounds too good to be true, go look at the last 10 years of history. Every week they've been posted. You can see the last 10 years of work. You can see all of our ages get older. You can see all the different pieces that tie to this stuff. You can't make this up.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
You can't make the commitment up. Granted, you talk about waterboarding and crazy other stuff.
It's not crazy, right?
We're all good people.
They're good, yeah.
We're all really good people. And we're trying to do what's right for mankind. And I think every single person in this room, and probably a whole heck of a lot more, would agree that the financial systems that have been deployed, and even elements of technological systems that have been deployed, have been irresponsibly deployed.
Yes, 100%.
And all we're trying to do is help right that. Are we looking to break any laws? Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, we need everyone's help to stay above board with what's going on with these things. Why is it? Anybody in this room know who created Bitcoin?
No.
No. Do you know why?
Because the government would kidnap them and make them decrypt everybody's
It's
whereabouts.
even deeper than that. But the point is you can't deliver a phone. Bitcoin's like a checking account.
Mm-hmm.
It's a store of value, but it takes forever. You can't operate society on it. You still gotta have a credit card, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, what if we told you that Clear can actually operate in less than 3 to 5 seconds in total settlement every time at a 1,000th of a cent? So it doesn't cost much, but it totally scales. You talk about scale. What if we said you could actually have a checking account like Bitcoin was a savings account? But in all reality, people are in control of it. And there are no centralized systems. And they don't go down. That's effectively what we're building. This is not just for money.
Yeah, so one of the things, you talk about the social network, which is for this first quarter of the year, is what the plan is with that. Imagine you post something on the social network, and you could charge people to see your post, right? And so it becomes a content pub sub platform. You publish, other people subscribe, and you can do value transfer. I could charge someone 1 cent to view my post, and that actually makes sense. Why? Because the transaction cost was 1/1000th of a cent, right? And so 999 is still going there. And so if you want to do like micro lending, or you want to do charity to somebody in Africa, you could send them 1 cent, and that actually makes sense, right? And all the transactions are 3 to 5 second finality. And so you just, Facebook hasn't been able to monetize things like that because they're tied to the existing centralized systems, right? They're in bed with them. But you go fully decentralized with that kind of speed on the transactions, and I think you're going to find all of the content producers in the world, like think the OnlyFans people paying 20% to the platform fee, like to hell with that. I'm going to go to the decentralized platform, get everything in real time, right, in crypto, which comes with certain tax benefits if you're not off-ramping all the time. And right, you can just see how this thing could balloon and explode really quickly. And because of the, if we didn't have 450,000 servers distributed around the world that could handle decentralized scaling, then I might be worried about how we're going to do this, right? But with those, it just becomes a matter of incentivizing those people and saying, look, this is the supply and demand. You've got spare CPU, you've got spare disk. You could be earning $10 or $20 a month just renting that out.
Today, we've already got 2 petabytes of unused storage today, and we haven't even pushed on the gas on the storage space. One more last question, and then you won't ever see Conrad again.
That's cool. It's fine with me. Fine with me.
Robert has a question. Hold on, Rob, because he's the one y'all might be coming to get some
Yeah,
back.
he's the brain, the team.
Go ahead, Rob. Ask.
Not at all. First of all, thank you for the town hall. It's extremely informative. Thank you for that. You had commented, and I'm approaching this from a kind of barrier to entry perspective, that you're taking a lot of open source stuff, bringing it together skillfully and creatively in an innovative manner. Is there an intellectual property position here, or where is there an opportunity to establish intellectual property? Has it been established, or is the innovation, internal trade secret?
It's actually just the opposite. It goes in the same spirit of everything else. We actually have a ton of companies that we bought, 6 total, and they all have a bunch of patents that they had. But that's usually an investor perspective. It's like, how can I stop other companies from getting into this? But if you think about all this, and you think about your question around people disappearing, it's actually the opposite. We take those patents from the companies that we bought, and we actually give them away. We give them to the Open Invention Network, which then puts all other open source patents together to then fight the closed source systems that are patent based. And what that does is it creates a barrier to entry for the big companies. Because think about it. Now the companies that have that same mentality of how because you're asking this from an investment standpoint. You're asking this from a, how do I justify a valuation when they don't have any kind of assets, or what's to say that somebody can't just take the technology and go put it on a phone and try and figure it out? You know what? We want people to do it. We want people to build storage. We want people to build. If they go and want to build other phones to do it, great. But I'll tell you what, they won't have the heart and spirit of what's in this room. And what's in this room is the best way to distribute this. Because this is what Bitcoin didn't have. They didn't have people that understood it. They didn't have, how many over 20 people that jump on a freaking plane because one dude says, you got to listen, right? And it's united together. They're never going to get that kind of barrier to entry. The timing, 10 years. 10 years we already got into it, just on the storage side of it. 5 years, literally on the security side of it. That's the only platform in the world that does that on the security side. That is locked down. That is not open. The ability for 2 years to put together a phone, yeah, could people put together a phone? But I'll tell you what, this time last year, my personal booty with many others, we're in China, we're in Japan, we're in Hong Kong, we're in South Korea, we're in India. You tell me how many people can get their booty on a plane and go do what we just did with supply chain management. 2011 to 2013, moved a family of 8 to New Zealand for 2 years to help Parliament keep that country solvent from an open source standpoint. If you read that book, Tools and Weapons, the chief legal counsel for Microsoft will prove my point. He'll talk about New Zealand, he'll talk about open source, and he'll talk about how Microsoft lost. So if it's about competitive advantages around an investor perspective, we're actually the opposite because we're open. But because we're open, we can take less than 100 people and do what over 100,000 people do with tons of money and tons of budgets. And you know what? They're just in bed with the governments that are giving them all this stuff.
Yeah.
But if we all want to unite together and actually use our resources, which is our mouth and our spirits and our pocketbooks, to align for the future of this, those are the people we need, we want. We're begging for all of you to come together. But please do it in a respect that is above board. I'm not saying you can't live your life and make your own choices, because please do. But this platform is for the future generations. And making the wrong decisions can put it in the wrong light, especially today. That's why you don't know who created Bitcoin. We're raising our hands and saying we're doing this. Because to be able to deliver a phone, you literally have to have a physical presence. Granted, from 2011 to 2013, and ever since then, we're domiciled out of New Zealand, so that we can literally deliver this service worldwide. The cellular providers, it's only a matter of time. But we believe that we can actually serve them as well. DIDs are the future. The ability to have a unique key between people and how we actually operate, it's absolutely the future. And what Conrad is all about is two things: truth and physics. And both of those tied to decentralized anything. And when you look at the roadmap for Clear, and this is one thing I want you to understand, because everything we've been talking about is basically Clear Foundation, Clear Center with the storage. So Clear Foundation's on the open source side of things and the legal side of it. Clear Center with the storage, Clear United with all of us coming together, right? And then Clear Cellular with the phones. When we start talking about Clear Health, and all I would ask you to do is read two documents. One that's the teal paper for Clear Health and the blue paper for Clear Power, or Clear Energy that ties to the power devices. If you start understanding the physics behind those two things, we're literally talking about decentralized health, asking the human body yes or no questions remotely. Okay, when you guys walked in, you walked past some people scanning in hands. We're absolutely able to do it with human to human and touching and things through frequencies. The question is, can we do it at scale remotely through the phones with the individual owning their identity? And if that's the case, you talk about business opportunity and ROI and valuations. What kind of valuation would you put on that? He's done science projects that are literally Nobel Prize worthy, absolutely. Then you talk about the energy. You want to talk about patents? There's already 22 patents on that side of it. We're not going there right now, but I would ask you, how many of you in this room have assets, and how many of you in this room trust it with gold or silver or platinum or any of those types of precious metals? And then really, what is the value of those? When did you ever use gold? You get a tooth? You know, it's a store of value because we trust it. Why do we trust it? Because you go back in history, well, they had to haul the horses and they had to shoot the mountain and blow this up and get the mine and put it down to this little thing that you could move around. In this day and age, that's gold.
Yep.
Right? And the 12 words is how you access it. So, does that answer your question?
Yes, sir. I appreciate the thoughtful answer, and I'm grateful. Can you give us this quick snippet on the energy?
No.
That's a few years.
I could possibly give you, depending on where things go and why we're talking, but
No, I'm saying I'll give you Robert's number. I gave you his number. Y'all can talk offline.
But thank you for your answer. I'm grateful. Thank you.
that goes two ways. Thanks for being interested.
Robert, you want to ask him about the China thing you had, the question?
You know, the only question, I have a little familiarity with China, as you do as well, and the Chinese are notorious for intellectual property theft, and I don't need to go any further there. I know that it's assembled there, so I know there's a tremendous amount of discussion and attributes related to security. Any concerns about assembly in China?
That's a good question, and the simple answer is we own 100% of the build systems on the server for the software. And we're the only ones that have access to that, right? So they don't have that. But then on the flip side, we actually wholly intend to go to China and say, please use this phone for, because let me back up. When you grab two ClearPhones, and this man is actually the one that architected this, and it's absolutely brilliant. Let's say a parent, okay, and a child. When you actually get your 12 words on the parent, before you actually get the 12 words on the child, you can actually put them together. And it actually takes a derived key from the parent to now manage the child. Passwords, apps, where they go online. Did you just get that? Did you really just get that?
Yep.
Yeah. So imagine the ability to do that from a parent to a child. Also imagine to do that from a corporation to an employee, which I think is a form of slavery, different conversation. Or think about doing it from a government to a citizen. What if I told you currently we're working on about 90,000 phones a month for one country that basically when you go into the country, they take your passport and they give you a phone. And they own the private key for that phone. Where you go, what you do, they know. But in all reality, it's a form of control depending on the law of the land of the country that you're in. So imagine a conversation going like this. By the way, I do think it's important for you guys to know this because you're all aware. Our treasurer for the Clear Foundation lived in China for more than 20 years. He was, actually I can't even go there with all these cameras.
Yeah, no.
Yeah, it gets extra. It gets extra. You already gave more than enough. Like we came here for other little technical things on the, the networking side of things, but I think we got more than enough
Yeah,
in the past.
I'll just say one thing, and that is, if you're running on a derived key on your phone, you can still see an audit log of who's accessing your data, right? And so anytime data is accessed, you can see it. And so, people look at China and they're like, oh, the censorship, and look what China's doing. But China's open about it, right? They tell you that they're doing it, and so you live with that expectation. Here in the US, they probably do 95% of the same stuff, and you have no idea.
Mm-hmm. And that's where the problem
And
is.
that's the problem.
It's the accountability. If a government's going to do this, and a citizen can actually see when the government looked at their web history, or what apps they have installed, or how much money they have in their accounts, at least the individual knows. But also think about it here in the US. I mean, we've got a lot of three-letter departments, a lot of three-letter acronyms that are actually testing these phones and deploying these phones where their agents actually get the phone, but the corporation or the entity owns the master private key.
Yeah, so the DOJ issues their employees with derived keys, right? So they can see everything the employee is doing. If an agent is communicating with people, they can read the communications, all the data. They own the encryption keys, right? And from that perspective, if you're working for a company and the company issues you a phone for company business with derived keys, use the phone for company business and have your own personal phone.
Of course.
Right? And you keep the thing separate.
Yeah.
Because the problem is when people want to use the business phone for all of their personal stuff, well, that's done.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Hey, Michael, let me give you a lineage thing before we go any further, because I want to give due prop to those who are here today, just for one quick second. And I want to do it while he was here. This is the guy, Billy Alexander. This is the guy that actually brought me into, Clear by some strange message on WhatsApp. Then I called Greg.
Christmas Eve.
Christmas Eve. Greg wanted to come down.
I wanted to come
Day.
Christmas Eve. I was ready to dead my family. Like, okay, cool. I see y'all all the time. I gotta, see what this is about.
I called Greg, and then Greg called Franklin, and then Franklin called everybody else.
Everybody else.
Franklin right there.
Wow, well done. Well done.
And then we all got we have a mastermind right now on WhatsApp where we all have a what's it called, what's it called, WhatsApp. WhatsApp group. We have a mastermind where we get on there and we get together.
100,000 movement.
Yeah, movement.
Because that's our first goal, to hit 100,000 phones in the next 3 months.
Now, based on that information, what you said right there, now let's get down to the brass facts here of the networking part.
Yeah.
Okay. So now we know how great.
Yeah, I'm off with Robert. Don't worry.
Yeah. Now that we know how great everything is, now we want to know how it's going to work for you and for us, and how we can scale it to make sure that it can be done on this side of the tracks as well as on the side that the PhD man is on. Right?
I think it's real simple. Time. Let's be wise in how we roll it out. We don't need to run crazy. It's more important that we get it right. You're the first phone that was a 620 that was shipped as a 420 The dude actually, who's that dude?
I mean, yeah.
So you like it better.
I like
but-
it. It's what I should have got anyway. I just wanted to like dive all in and see, you know, the top one, and eventually I would have got this as a secondary.
But that's a perfect example, though.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of things that are gonna happen, but something that we don't wanna be associated to. When we say we're gonna do something, we wanna do exactly that. When you buy a 620, you get
Yeah.
a 620, even though it's shipped out the same day, but it's shipped out as a 420.
Yeah.
For me, that's just not acceptable, period. But, even though he liked it better, and he saves money now, but you understand, we want to grow if you really take time out of the equation. Because think about how many people would even listen to that town hall meeting this morning, just half of it, and get overwhelmed. You think this is crazy. But if you take time out of the equation, like us humans, we rotate around the sun, we pulse, we think in time, because we're gonna die soon, right? These physical bodies anyways. Think about it differently. Because the only way to help pass on good things, at least something meaningful to the next generations, is to literally not limit ourselves. Do we need 100,000 phones in 3 months?
I do.
There may be a demand for it, right?
Yeah.
And I would actually argue, out of all the humans on Earth, it's not a crazy demand. We plan on literally fulfilling hundreds of thousands of phones every month, right? Literally, and more. 90,000 phones a month is only 1 million phones a year. So for us, it's like, there's gonna be a lot more. Go ahead, sir.
90,000, is that what you're basically be able to distribute monthly? 90,000?
Just with one opportunity, we're working. Okay.
I think he's asking manufacturing
Yeah,
capability.
with-
Yeah, that's what we asked.
That's what I'm
That
saying.
was the original
From a
question as well.
manufacturing
Yeah.
standpoint, we actually have one opportunity lodged with the manufacturing process, really the assembly process.
Mhm.
The assembly process can do it all. The only thing we're having supply chain issues on right now is the large screens, because these are like, have you guys ever seen a screen this big?
No, it's almost a
No,
tablet.
7.1 inch screen, but you don't need a big tablet anymore and a phone, right? So these are really hot commodities. They're hard to get, and we're the only ones that have to
Yeah,
sell.
everybody has it. I looked that over the internet.
Yeah.
We're the only ones.
Right, so my point is that right there, and that's one of the reasons we shut down our internal financing on the 620. You can buy it outright.
Ah,
Yeah,
that's why.
yeah, you got it, because we were just selling them too fast. So
¿Se recuerda que
literally,
no podíamos comprar financiado? Lo pagaron porque se están vendiendo más rápido.
so this is a unique phone. All three are very unique for use cases. Some of them in the future will be a gaming-based phone. Some of them will be a hardened phone, you know, if you want to drop it in the water or the mud and drive over it with a car. So the point is today we can fulfill hundreds of thousands a month. But that's really only, you know,
Dropping the bucket.
1 million a year. This will be doing a lot more than that. The same way that Apple set up their infrastructure in fulfillment, we have the same capacity. We have the same capacity.
That's amazing.
Now, I can't make that statement because I haven't gone through all of the Apple infrastructure. But what I can tell you is we literally have 2,200 people that dedicate their lives to build these.
2,200.
2,200 people. And not only, and this is, remember, this is a different life. You guys all know exactly what I'm talking about. Not all of you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth.
Yeah.
You understand what I'm saying? They literally live to build these things. They live in the factories. That's the same thing that Apple does. Do I agree with it? No. But do I go and shake their hands and look in their eyes and ask if they're happy? Yes. These are good people. The bottom line is we have the ability to fulfill it. They want the work. They need the work. Is it fair? Absolutely. Do we do everything we can to provide the value all the way around? When you look at our prices, $150 a month, $100 a month
50.
for this one, and $50 a month for this one, and it comes with the cellular service, and in some cases, all of the medical side of it, which we haven't even started talking about it. That's value. We're not being greedy. When it comes time, we're paying out 40%. And you know what he's building right now? And others? ClearPay, which will actually, and you should probably talk a little more about this. ClearPay, which will actually pay out 33%. When you log on, you put the order in, we actually go through some serious fraud detection stuff. We go through some serious fulfillment stuff. There's a gateway thing that pays it, which is really, you want to talk about Achilles heel? That's the Achilles heel of business. It's that payment gateway. which is a whole other conversation. Why? Because we're actually enabling the future of those gateways.
Wow.
Are they gonna want what we're doing? No. But when you go and look at the bank and it actually hits, it's 7 people. So from you, to you, to you, the 7 people in the circles automatically get their phone, pull up in Clear app, dings. You got it. How many of you guys use Exodus? Raise your hand. You know how your change drops in?
Yeah.
Same type of thing, but imagine Clear drops in for 7 of you when he buys a phone.
Instantly.
Instantly, real time.
Yo, man.
But here's one question, real quick.
No, I gotta make sure these dudes just understood. I just,
Oh, I know.
Say that again. Repeat.
and then you can push another button and convert that into USD, convert it into gold, convert it into BTC. And what he's talking about tax benefits, do you really understand that?
Oh, we know.
I definitely understand that part.
Well, he definitely knows. We know that. They came from me for 144,000, so I know. But the question was, so one of the things when someone buys a phone, you get $20. What's that about?
I don't know.
So let me say it again, because most of us are leaders, like, and we've been watching, like you watch the leaderboard, we watch the check too as well. I understand that you got yours, we trying to get ours and spread the word, but it has been a issue when somebody buys a phone for $1,000 and then but your pay says 20 and it's supposed to say 108.
There's 2 things that have to be solved. One, we've got you're probably like 3 or 4 circles away.
No. This is all direct.
So $1,000 phone you get $20 on. There's a
He's
problem.
not even in my line. He bought the phone and he doesn't even show up that he bought the phone.
And I bought the phone from him.
And he got
Hold on.
Okay.
All you guys got to do is make sure the referral code is in there.
Yeah. No, it's in there.
It's in there. We did this together.
We're network marketers, so
You know,
I know. Hey,
that's part of why we're here is the whole data entry and the whole like just making sure everything is tracked.
Yeah.
That's part of why we're here to get those questions
So
answered.
yeah, we go to my back office, my
So
barber,
tell you
I got
what,
a haircut,
tell you
told
what.
him he bought the phone, it showed up $20.
Tell you what, tomorrow morning, as early as we can, I want a use case on the workflow here. And then I'm gonna have it analyzed, actually send this to me tonight, I'll have it analyzed tomorrow. We'll go and review the exact same process and figure out what happened to it. But it's really 2 simple things. On the circles, we need to make sure that they're built out correctly. And then we need to audit it. And for those that were on the town hall today, we gave you a list to search everybody in there, and you can actually go through and see who's connected to who, not just from the graphical standpoint, but from a list and other things.
And we're not stressed about it, because that's why we're here.
That's why we're here. We're here
It's gonna
to.
happen.
I am.
Yeah, no,
I am.
we're here to understand. Okay, when is it safe to go full on ham? Because these are all $1 million earners in their
You
own
will
right.
be safe.
Yeah.
When 2 things happen. One, the reporting is totally accurate. In my opinion, it has been. I haven't been able to find one where someone's plugged it in accurately and it wasn't there.
That's not true.
I personally
I've been going through
haven't
it.
been able to do it. Every time I bring it up, it's like audit this one, audit this one. They give me really good responses.
Yeah, it might be on your back end, but on our front end, it's not showing.
Perception's reality, right?
Yeah, that's
So
what
we
it
got to
is.
get that perception to be straight up. Once that's done and they're in your circles, then the ClearPay actually pays out in an accurate way. So the 33%, and then the pool's at the end of the month. So really, we just got to check 3 boxes, and this is an engine that can literally go by itself.
Yeah, what?
Now, Michael, when are we gonna start getting paid so we can start building? That was one of my major questions.
Those are you got to check those 3 boxes.
We gotta report properly first.
Yeah, we got to get.
Right now, you're
your
getting
circles.
$20. You want $20?
No.
Okay, all right, you know, I'll give you
But
20.
sometimes it shows up 108.
I don't know.
Sometimes it shows up 20 or 30, and sometimes they don't show up at all. Like he's not even in my system. He's in there as I brought him in, but when he bought the phone, I can't see anything saying 108 or $60 or anything in there.
What I would propose is we literally get a computer and we log into the system.
I brought
Yeah, we
you say that, and I
yes.
brought one.
Yeah, we
I want to be respectful of Conrad's time.
Oh, yeah,
I can
I'm sorry,
do this
Conrad.
stuff all day long.
We appreciate you.
No, you're good.
I didn't do that part of the system. I did the credit.
Okay,
We just need to talk to whoever builds the back end system.
Yeah, and I'm finishing up ClearPay. It's going to be done by the end of the week, which you probably
End of the month. I told him the end of the month.
Oh, you did? Okay. I'm on the last 2 things, and I've been running a development mode locally, and it's all working great. But literally,
Hold on, just listen.
you can switch your Clear for like Bitcoin, Ethereum, gold, silver, platinum. I mean, you can choose, there are like 360 assets you can choose from. 3-second finality.
So you're telling me by within the month, let's just say forget the week, within the month that all that can happen. where you can transfer clear token. I believe it's gonna be. Or
Yeah,
is
we're
just
calling
clear
it-
tape?
Clear
We're
reward.
calling
Clear
it
reward.
reward.
Clear reward.
You got. You can't have fun.
Anything else for Conrad?
Hey,
Congratulations,
you got any
bro.
questions you want to ask the developer?
Only thing I want to say is thank you.
Yeah, I got it all recorded.
Yeah, well, ultimately, I think you know this. We're like super honest about everything. And if
Oh,
it was a
I got it all
mistake, it's
recorded.
honest
He
and
broke
we'll
it.
fix
Right,
it.
yeah, I figured that, yeah.
Right.
Oh, everything he's about to disappear for the rest of his life. So he doesn't take
Yeah,
it.
appreciate that.